Tigers and guests, welcome to our Suncoast Tiger Bay virtual event. My name is Joanna Cheshire. I'm the Vice President of Suncoast Tiger Bay Club and your host for this virtual panel discussion. So joining us is Amy Cianci, you just heard from her. She'll be assisting us with the questions during the Q&A portion of the presentation, which I will explain. So the local elections impact our community and our everyday lives. The Suncoast Tiger Bay Club serves as a civic commons where thought leaders and citizens of all political stripes come together and discuss the pressing issues of our time. These conversations are always important, but in these challenging weeks, they have taken on a whole new tone and have a much deeper meaning. Even though we cannot be together at our regularly monthly luncheons, Suncoast Tiger Bay will keep the conversation going through virtual events just like this one. So please help us support our continuing commitment to bringing you timely and informative programming by becoming a member, renewing your membership, or just donating today. A donation of $25 or $35, depending on what you would have spent on Tiger Bay Luncheon, that will help sustain our club during these tough times and allow us to continue to keep you informed and connected in our community. Also consider promoting your business by sponsoring a Tiger Bay virtual event. For more information, contact us at the email address on your screen. So with that said, I would like to thank you for joining us for the Pinellas County School Board District 1 Candidate Forum. It is with great pleasure that I introduce our moderator, Kelly Kirchner. Kelly is a past president of Suncoast Tiger Bay and the vice president and dean of the Eckerd College Executive and Continuing Education Division. Thank you so much for joining us today, Kelly.
Thanks very much, Joanna and Amy and all of our candidates and the many Tiger Bay members and guests that we have in today's presentation that we know is critically important to our community. Perhaps one of these elections that does not get enough attention, but if you appreciate the budgetary size of that the school district manages, not to mention the lifelong impact on our children that will be the future leaders of this community, how important this election is. This particular district is county-wide, also making it that much more relevant for everyone. And today's conversation that regardless of where you live in Pinellas County, you will have the opportunity to vote for one of these candidates. And I imagine for many of our guests tuning in today, this might be the first time that you're getting to see them in person and hear what their ideas might be for our children in our school system. So channeling my inner Chris Berman of ESPN, as in addition to all of us missing the St. Pete Yacht Club's delicious buffet, I know we're also missing the enjoyment of live sporting events. And as we go into the ballot booth on August 18th, it might be hard to remember names and associations. And since Chris Berman is so good at that, allow me to introduce today's candidates running for the District 1 slate in a summer picnic Chris Berman fashion. Up first, we have Laura Pass the Heinz Ketchup, but that would be Laura Hine. We also have Stephanie Oscar Meyer Hot Dogs on Tap. Stephanie Meyer, it's great to have you. And don't forget, Tom, add all of the toppings on top of that hot dog for a wonderful summer picnic, Tom Topping. It's wonderful to have you all. Hopefully that'll help all of you with today's audience, whoever does well, that you'll be able to remember when you go into the voting booth who your preferred candidate may be. Candidates, we know that campaigning during a pandemic has proven to be a special and particularly onerous challenge for all of you. And so we appreciate you being here with us today. I think first we'd like to ask all of you to take about 3 minutes and give the brief elevator pitch on who you are, why it is that you're running for office, and what you can tell us that makes you particularly qualified to represent the entire county on the Pinellas County School Board. And we're going to go ahead and start with you, Laura, and then we'll go to Stephanie and then Tom.
Good. Hi. Thank you, Kelly. And thank you, Tiger Bay. I'm happy to be here with you all. I certainly wish we could be in person. I've been at Tiger Bay a number of times. I'm a member of Tiger Bay, and I would have really looked forward to being up there on the podium and talking with everyone. So nonetheless, here we are. And thank you for having me. So my name is Laura Hine. I was born and raised in Tampa, Florida, educated in Hillsborough County Public Schools. I graduated from Chamberlain High School. And after high school, I attended the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis for college, where I studied aerospace engineering, graduated from the Army Airborne School, and did an internship in NASA, along with a number of other interesting opportunities. After Annapolis, I was an officer in the Navy for 6 years. I served on 2 different ships out of the Pacific Ocean, out of San Diego. And I did 2 deployments to the Middle East and back. One of them, we launched Tomahawks in Afghanistan. The other one, we put Marines into Afghanistan with the first long-range train into Kandahar. After leaving the Navy, I came back home to Tampa, and I became a licensed general contractor. If you've flown Southwest Airlines in the last 15 years, you've seen my work, that terminal there, as well as if you've been to the James Museum in downtown St. Petersburg. As a licensed general contractor, of course, we're responsible for a tremendous amount of resources, both human and financial resources, as well as budget, schedule, accomplishing goals. And it was when we had our own children that I first came very awake to public education. As somebody who had been born and raised and educated in public schools, and I've had some great opportunities from my education, it was really disheartening when our first child was born, and I heard people say, "Oh, well, public schools, Florida public schools, you have to really, really, really look and choose and all those kinds of things." And so, again, while I was educated through a master's degree in public school, I have an MBA in finance. I came to be so passionate about public education when my own children were coming of the age for school. I came to know what I think is a quagmire of school choice, and I saw significant inequities and educational opportunities for children. The fact that a child has to win a lottery still seems radically incorrect to me. And it was something I had to learn more about. So we sent our children to our zoned public school, which was a Title I letter grade D school with 74% economic disadvantage and 50% minority students, and I got involved. I've learned from the teachers at our school, from our parents, from Academy Prep. I've met Jeffrey Canada with the Harlem Children's Zone. I've studied the KIPP academies, Denver Public Schools. I've engaged with Healthy Foundation, with the Foundation for Healthy St. Petersburg, with our school district, with our school. I've met our legislators. I've been to Tallahassee on education. I read the books. I read the studies. In these 5 years, deep in education, plus my wider aperture of experience and learning, which I think has great value. I've learned a great deal, and I'm running for school board because I believe it's where I can next best have a positive impact on education. I think that broad experience, financial and executive ability, and demonstrated commitment to public service through my military experience to serve all Americans, and my personal family commitment with my children in public schools makes me a great candidate for the school board. So thank you again for having me today.
Thanks very much, Laura. Stephanie?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you to the Suncoast Tiger Bay Club for hosting this forum and allowing me the opportunity to reach members of our community today. As you mentioned, I'm Stephanie Meyer. I'm running for Pinellas County School Board District 1. I'm a Pinellas native. I'm also a student of our public schools. I'm the daughter of a beloved Pinellas County school teacher who retired after 34 years with the county. Now I am the wife of a firefighter, the mom to 2 wonderful children, and an educator myself. And so I understand the incredible value and benefit of a solid, well-rounded education. In fact, I believe that education is the foundation for one's future success. But education is not just vital for the individual, it's also vital for our businesses and for our community that depend on the essential knowledge that is required to become a well-equipped member of the workforce and of the community. And although many years have passed since I've attended public schools here in Pinellas, the systemic issues persist. And so our families are searching for alternative schools at alarming rates, and yet our county is still struggling to address these fundamental problems. And that really ultimately failed to provide a world-class education for all of our students. And so the fact is that our children deserve better. And in these unprecedented times, we must ensure that all of our students families, teachers alike, members of this community, all have a voice and an advocate on our school board. My combined experience of 17 years as a businesswoman and now as a middle school social studies teacher has equipped me with the leadership and experience and skills that our stakeholders are seeking in a school board member. So as someone who isn't beholden to any special interest, and essentially my only motivation is to do what's best for each and every student, each and every unique child that passes through our hallways. I really believe in the great potential of community-based, democratically accountable schools that speak for all parties involved, especially the families of our students. And so the board needs to speak up for the community, push back against proposals that do not have the support of parents and guardians, teachers, and the community. In my family, we believe in leading by example, and that to truly lead, one must serve. And so it would be my great honor to serve your vision and your aspirations for your child's education. And I would be very honored to have your vote on August 18th. Thank you again for hosting this forum, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much, Tiger Bay, and everyone for having me. And Kelly, that is easily the first hot dog topping reference I've had on my name. When you grow up with a name like Topping, you hear pizza topping, ice cream topping, oftentimes, so I totally understand it. And I'm with you on the Chris Berman ESPN reference as well. So good job. I appreciate it. Thank you for that creativity. And yes, I am Tom Topping, and I'm a 23-year educator in public school education. I've been a teacher, I've been a coach, and I've been a district level administrator. I got a master's in human resources while I was a teacher. And, most teachers like to get master's degrees in educational leadership and pursue the avenue of becoming an assistant principal and principal. Well, I'm one of those guys that likes to take a different path. And I chose to get a master's degree in human resources because I wanted to serve a larger community in a different way, not only within school districts, but I had the vision of actually working at the district level to help with professional development, staffing, issues like that. So I've been on the front lines, not only as a classroom teacher, but also as a coach. I've ridden on the buses. I've experienced everything it is to coach. And I've also worked at the district level. And I understand how districts function from the inside and out. I've run two nonprofits. I was the past president of Suncoast HR, the Pinellas County HR Association, and I started my own business as a speaker and business trainer and business coach as well. So I understand that, currently right now, it's clear that the value of our teachers and the value of an experience of going to school is valued like no other by our parents, students, and our community. And we're faced some serious choices and some serious decisions coming up in this school year that I think experience in this role warrants. And so my platform is about healthy and safe schools, about reducing the achievement gap, increasing culturally relevant instruction, equity and access for all students, and academic rigor. We know that there were instances of online learning that weren't very rigorous, and that doesn't really prepare a child for college, career, and life like we want them to be prepared. So we've got a lot of work to do. We need experienced professionals to roll up their sleeves on that board and get to work to provide these opportunities to increase funding for the arts, and for early childhood education and things like that. And I believe I'm the best and most qualified candidate for this role. And I believe that this is my time and that I'm ready to assume this position. And I appreciate the time everyone is spending here with us to learn and get to know us a little bit more. And on or before August 18th, I would appreciate your vote as well. So thank you very much for the time and the opportunity. I look forward to sharing more. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Tom, and thank you all for sticking to your time limits. That was very impressive. We're going to kind of do a round robin, so we're going to ask Stephanie, you'll start, and then Tom will go second, and then we'll go Laura third on our first question. Yesterday, there was a 6-hour workshop that perhaps all three of you watched with the current Pinellas County School Board. And I think the biggest concern that employees of the school district, our teachers, our staff, the children and their families want to know is what should happen in August when our children are supposed to go back to school. And while this is not a decision that we know that you will make because you will not sit on that board, I think it might orient voters to understand your thought process right now. And I'm assuming by the nodding of your heads that you had a chance to watch or read about yesterday's conversation. If you could tell us your thoughts on reopening schools and what that looks like and how you would measure that as a school board member. So Stephanie, we'll start with you.
Great, thank you. So as the only current teacher on the board, the only current teacher who experienced distance learning with my students and with my own children, I will tell you that I truly believe, and I agree with the American Academy of Pediatrics, that our children are best taught in school, in a brick and mortar school setting. And so, yes, I did listen to the entire workshop yesterday and the school board meeting. And I'm in agreement with our superintendent. I think the plan that was laid out is a great plan. I think the key in the plan is that it gives our parents and our teachers options. Essentially, you have the option as a parent or as a family, as a student, and as a teacher to decide whether you are most comfortable with sending your students back to school with certain caveats like masks and social distancing, making sure our classrooms are clean, etc. And then also having the opportunity to send your children back to school virtually based on what is best for your child. One thing that I want to point out again is that I am the only candidate who has experienced this from both sides, both as the teacher and as the parent. One of my children is in middle school and is pretty self-sufficient and could, kind of manage the day in, day out of virtual schools. And on the other hand, I have a daughter who really needs a much more assistance in that area for a number of other reasons, but also because of her age. She's in elementary school and she's at that critical age of learning, really where, reading proficiency is critical to her academic success. And so I saw firsthand our students who were straight A students go from straight A's to really struggling with virtual school. And so I think the key here, and this is a part of my entire platform, is providing our families with choices and options. I think we need to identify the fact that our kids are not statistics. They aren't numbers to be thrown out. They are individuals and they all have individual needs. And so the more options we can provide for families, the better. And so I think yesterday what we saw was a great plan. I know there are plenty of concerns that we all still have, myself included, being a teacher and a mom. I'm certainly concerned about what going back to school is going to look like, but I think the more options we have, the better. And I think Pinellas County, our superintendent, has laid out a great plan for returning to school.
Super. Thanks very much, Stephanie. Tom?
Yeah, I'm the only candidate on this forum that actually has public school teaching experience. And I can tell you that I watched the board meeting yesterday as well. And although there were choices for parents, there were no choices for teachers. There are questions about, if I select Pinellas Virtual, I give up my seat in a magnet program or a choice program. There were questions about, my choices. Either I send my kids back to school, or what do I do for them? I have to take leave from work and things like that. And let me clarify. If I select the My PCS Online option, then my child stays home and does a synchronous class schedule, meaning at 9 a.m. I have a class that I have to sit in, and I work in that class setting. And so a parent most likely has to be there with a child. So that brings into some work issues. So there are very, very difficult choices, not only for our parents and students, but for our teachers. I appreciate the hard work that the superintendent and his staff did in creating that plan to meet the requirements of the governor and the Florida Board of Education. But I also think that there needs to be more considerations about returning to school right now, especially with the under the current conditions where cases are spiking at record rates. I like what some of the other districts are doing in terms of surrounding districts, in terms of delaying the start and using that time to prepare teachers for the potentiality of more online education and more virtual learning, and preparing plant operators, bus drivers, food service workers, all of those folks to be ready for the opening of school when that time does come. I also appreciate the superintendent saying that plan is fluid and that there can be changes made depending on the circumstances, in particular around the virus. So one thing we have to do is stay nimble and flexible when it comes to this, and we have to be ready to pivot on a dime when the time comes to do this. Because I look at this, from an HR perspective and an educator perspective. The HR perspective, you have to take care of your employees and you have to take care of your customers. Educational perspective, I'm really, really concerned about academic learning and rigor and access for everyone, so that if we do go online, that we don't lose a generation of kids due to this virus. So I'm concerned two different levels that I think it provides me that experience to understand. So again, I think the plan did what it was supposed to do, which was satisfy the state to say this is what we'll do if we reopen. But I appreciate that this is also fluid and that we could change if necessary.
Laura?
Thank you for leading with this question, Kelly. This is clearly what's on most of our minds. And, as a parent with two young students, I have a first grader and a fourth grader who, finished the last semester in the online environment. And I'm very close with all of the teachers in our school. And so I've certainly experienced it. And it's quite a time. I mean, this is a time that has disrupted our families. It's disrupted our workplaces. For many of us, it has had a significant economic impact. It's as we all know, we are going through a very unique time. I think when it comes to reopening schools, one, I think it has to be a local decision. And I think that local decision has to be driven first by health. Now, when we talk about health, there's a couple different ways to talk about it. Yes, there's our physical health, which of course is about the virus. We have to do everything we can to protect people and to keep them healthy, both our students and our 14,000 employees, largest employer in Pinellas County. And as an executive director of a public-facing institution, I have had to make these kinds of decisions along with our board of directors, along with our leadership team here, on whether we close, we open, what all the guidelines are. I'm very familiar with all this, with all the CDC guidelines, with the CARES Act, et cetera. So health is in that physical form of the virus. It's also in the form of mental and emotional health as well, right? And we know that we've had a decade of increasing adolescent anxiety, depression, suicide. It's worse during this time. Child abuse is a problem. Domestic abuse is a problem. So there are all kinds of factors. At the end of the day, though, I agree. I think that the plan that the district has put together at the request of the Department of Education gives us the options. We have to get it submitted for the sake of having our PCS online option, which looks like it's going to be vastly improved. The virtual schooling, good for Pinellas County schools, getting something up in those 2 weeks turned around fast. That was amazing. Not awesome. Could have been certainly much, much better. And I think that the My PCS Online, clearly Kevin Hendrick and his team have done their homework and found a much better option. So we should have our options available. They have not made the decision to reopen face-to-face schools yet. That will come as we watch our numbers with the input from the local Department of Health, from the Florida Department of Health. And I think first and foremost, we have to keep health of our students, of our teachers, of our staff, of our families in mind. And it is a difficult time. I am most concerned also, so health and then learning loss. And so really addressing learning loss during the time we've already had and the time we have going forward. So yesterday in the meeting, they talked about the technology aspect of it. So instead of one device per family, it's going to be one per student. And then they also talked about the wireless access and things like that. So it's one thing to provide access, but who's sitting there working with the student doing this? And it's difficult. We are a dual working family. I'm sure there are lots of other dual working families. And it's one thing if you're a person someone is staying home with the kids and you can manage this online option. So there are a lot of moving parts to this. And I do think that our superintendent and our school board have done a good job so far. And again, that decision has not been made. I would like to be at the table. I've had a lot of experience in crisis management and crisis control. I care deeply about this with my own children and the relationships I have in the school system. And I do wish I was at the table. And I wish our school board and our leadership well, and I hope they keep health and learning loss at the very top of their list.
Super. Thank you all. Probably almost just as important right now in the summer of 2020 that I don't know if any of us will soon forget this summer, is really a national, state, and local conversation on a race equity movement. And so I wanted to just share with everyone, particularly our candidates right now, a graph that the Tampa Bay Times had. This goes back to their Failure Factory series. It's a little bit dated, obviously, from 2014, but my understanding is these numbers have not changed much. And so the question for all of you would be, what are your feelings on equity? What does that look like when we have segregated schools that are close to 90% African American students? Is that good for our children? Is that good for our school district? And if it's not good for you, then what do we do, and what do you do as an elected leader in the school district to change that? And then I think part of that mix in your 3 minutes is, tell us how your views on diversity and how you will represent. We have 3 Caucasian candidates here, but you're representing the full district. But what is your view on representing the minority parents and students of this district as well, and how you'll come at that from this? So we're going to start now, Tom, with you, and Laura, you'll go second, and then Stephanie last.
Thank you, Kelly. And obviously closing the achievement gap, if you go to my website at www.electomtopping.com, you can see that one of my priorities is closing the achievement gap while increasing culturally relevant instruction. For this reason, I think the district has done a fairly decent job of trying to address the achievement gap. In particular, when I was in professional development working for Pinellas County Schools, I was on the professional development team for the achievement gap. And so I had experience from the inside, albeit it was a little bit short at that time. But I appreciate the work that's being done, but clearly the goal is not being accomplished as well as it should be. We've definitely dispatched a ton of resources to our transformation zone schools, the schools that you exactly are talking about. And in the terms of a English and math learning specialist at each school, a school psychologist, a school counselor, a social worker. They have administrative interns working there as well to help. They have teachers that are hired just in case someone exits and leaves the school. That teacher can come in and work right away. But what my experience tells me and what research says is the biggest influence outside of the home on a student's education is their teacher. And so we need to upskill the teachers that we have. We need to recruit. We need to retain. We need to get the best teachers in front of those students and the most dedicated. And it's not just about throwing a lucrative package, of comp and benefits at them in the beginning, but it's support for those teachers. It's increasing the school day. It's providing tutors. It's working with the community to help all of our students that have this huge gap to increase. My slogan is "Let's get to the future first." And part of that, the numbers that you showed are consistent nationwide. Pinellas County Schools has an opportunity to get to the future first by reducing that achievement gap, by closing it off completely. And so that's really the goal for me, is to say, we need to increase funding. We need to upskill and train our teachers and everybody that works in those schools. We need to work with the community, and we need to do all of those things so that they can have the support. What does equity and diversity mean to me? It's been how I lead my life. I've taught in our public schools. I've been in the homes of some of our kids. My goddaughters, you can see on my website. One goes to Gulfport Elementary, the other goes to John Hopkins. Love those kids and work with families and kids throughout Pinellas County. And so ensuring that every family is lifted and that every kid has an opportunity, they all have the opportunity for success, it should be the goal. And I'm going to ensure that. I'm going to make that a priority. That is a priority of mine, is closing the achievement gap. And there's no other way to say it. It's in writing. You can see it on my webpage. Not sure where else you can see it, but you can see it there on my webpage.
Great. Thanks very much, Tom. Laura?
Thank you. Yes. So thank you for showing that chart from 2014 from the Tampa Bay Times. So it was in 2014 when my son, I guess at that point would have been 3 or 4, and we were looking at schools. And when that series came out, and it really caught me. And I remember that chart specifically. I then got, like I said, actively involved. I noticed that our neighborhood school was, a D school, a Title I school, and sent my children there. And because I don't think it's okay to have these gross inequities in education opportunities, and that's what they are. And it does come down segregation, excuse me, I stutter. Thank God I had people throughout my public school career help me with it a bit. If you look at the history, Pinellas County Schools was one of the last counties in this country to integrate their schools and to start busing for integration. It's the same time we experienced the white flight and the founding of the number of the private schools in our area, which are great schools, but it's a fact that it is tied to that experience. My family chose to keep us in public school, and I was bused during integration. And I think that that's an important part of my experience and the way I frame the world. I believe that being in school with people, with all kinds of people, is vital. And I also believe, if you read the Century Foundation study on this, that diversity in a classroom positively impacts the learning experience for all students, all of them. And I've shown my faith in that with our own choices. Each year, I chart the school grades against the percent economic disadvantage and percent minority in a school. There is a direct line correlation. Excuse me. So a carrot and stick, one-size-fits-all approach does not work. We have to ameliorate the impacts of the socioeconomic experience. So Bridging the Gap plan in 2016, which I'm sure was quite in response to the Tampa Bay Times series, focuses on closing that learning gap in between Black and non-Black students. And I think it does address it in a number of ways, looking at advanced coursework, it's student discipline inequities, which are serious, ESE identification, our minority hiring and retention. We have 18% African-American students and 8% Black instructors. I would add to that plan, early childhood education is absolutely top. Early childhood education. Increase in our school counselors, an extended day with enrichments, wraparound services that are identified by that community as to what they need, not people outside of that community who decide what they need. An intercultural curriculum, I think, is crucial. And we've got to expedite the equity work that's being done by Hilary Van Dyke and her team at Pinellas County Schools around conscious and unconscious bias. Yes, funding matters. Florida is the 4th largest economy in this country. We are the 46th in education funding. I think we really need to understand where our priorities are. I know you also asked how do we think as Caucasians that we can represent this community. I think what I would like to say is that creating community and access and listening and learning and asking and having those relationships is the most important thing that we can do. And that has been a priority for me in my work at our public school, North Shore Elementary, to create the relationships, create the access, have the space where all voices engage. And I'd like people's help in that. So in any way that you identify that you can help me do that job the best I can, I ask you for your help in that.
Thanks very much, Laura. Stephanie?
So I've done a lot of research on this as an educator. And one of the things that stands out to me is most recently, we're looking at data from 2009 for these exact schools that you've mentioned here and shown on the chart. And the fact is that only 1/5 of these third graders in these elementary schools that you mentioned can read. And so we keep hearing about rigor and extended school days and other funding and all that. And we've done some of those things, and we're still in this position. And so I think we really need to look at some different ideas if we really want to tackle this very important issue. I think number one, what we need to do is we need to engage with parents. And I know that we've talked about this over and over again, and I've talked to, over the last year, many teachers who teach in these Title I schools, and I'm asking them, what do you need? What does help look like? And what they're telling me is that they need to reach these parents. These parents need to have a seat at the table. And asking them to come to our schools is not going to work. We've tried that. They feel disenfranchised. They feel that they don't have a voice. They feel that they don't have a seat at this table. So what we need to do is go to them. We need to outreach. We need to let these families and these minority communities know that we need their support in their education of their child. So that's number one. We need to outreach. And like I said, I've talked to many teachers who work in these Title I schools who completely agree that this is step number one. Number two, we need to utilize our community in that. We need to utilize our businesses in that. And that's where I come into play here. I've worked and lived in this community my entire life. I was in sales and marketing for 17 years. I worked with small businesses. I worked with regional businesses and national businesses. And so I know what these partnerships, the value of these partnerships. And so when we're talking about resources, we need to understand that people, not money, are our most valuable resource. And so we need to engage our community. We need to engage with our parents. We need to meet them where they are. We need to ask them, please come back. This is your seat at the table. We need your help. We need your partnership in education. That's number one. Number two, we need to bring back the love of learning. I mean, this is common sense. I remember when I was in kindergarten and I was learning to read. And every week we would have these new little letters come and show up in our classroom, and they would teach us about the sounds the letters made. And then they would teach us about the different words that started with the letter. And essentially we were learning phonics. We were learning how to read, and we were having fun. And here 33 years later, I can recall this because it was so impactful and meaningful, and it made sense. So we need to bring back the love of learning. We need to stop putting devices in front of our, kindergartners' faces, expecting them to do these assessments that, quite often they don't even understand what they're doing. We need to bring back the love of learning. We need to engage our parents. We need to meet them where they are. We need to ensure them that they have a spot at the table and that they are valuable partners in education. And again, my experience, 17 years in business, I've got those partnerships. And then again, being in education, currently being an educator, yes, I teach in a private school, but I will tell you that we have diversity in our school. Most of our students come to our school on a scholarship or on financial aid. Our students come because they're not able to be served in our public school system. So I'm teaching a vast array of different types of students. And the other thing I want to mention about diversity is that I am a history teacher. I specifically teach 8th grade early American history. And if you know anything about early American history, you know that it's very contentious. And this is a lot of the conversations we're having in this country today stem around the concepts that I teach in my classroom. And I will tell you that I believe it is 100%. We have to be teaching real American history, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. Our students deserve to know the truth about the history of this country, but they also deserve to know about the good of this country. And so always included is cultural diversity. I always teach my students about the African-American culture that developed all uniquely on its own in this country, as well as other cultures that developed. And so we need to be doing that in our public schools as well. We can't shy away from this. This is important stuff. Our kids deserve it. And I have the experience and the knowledge and the understanding to tackle these very difficult issues.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. We look forward to your Zoom presentation soon on whether or not Hamilton is an accurate depiction of our... We're going now to our audience, and we have a number of folks that have been posting questions. I would encourage, if you have a question, to go ahead and post it now. Our first question comes from someone who's very familiar with our school board. It's from Linda Lerner, who asks, do you believe schools that receive voucher money should be able to discriminate on hiring staff and admitting students based on sexual orientation, gender identity, and religion? And again, we're going to start this time with Laura, and we're back at the top of the order and go Laura, Stephanie, Tom.
Thank you for that question, Linda. No, I don't. I believe that taxpayer dollars, when they are used, should not go to organizations that discriminate on the basis of race, gender, or sexual identity. Period.
That's great. Tom?
I thought Stephanie was next, but I'll go. That's a simple answer. No. Yes. No. No. That's and I appreciate the most recent Supreme Court ruling that said that sexual preference was not it's not necessarily a protected class, but a reason that you could not fire someone as well. So yes. No. That's like Laura said. No.
And Stephanie.
Well, I think the simple answer is no. I don't think anybody should be discriminated against. But I think we also need to realize that these laws are made out of Tallahassee. And as a school board member, none of us here have the authority to change those things. And so this is a legislative issue. The other thing I will say is that schools that take vouchers have the option to take vouchers. They don't have to take vouchers. And I know plenty of private schools that don't take vouchers for this reason, because they are concerned about being, they don't want there to be any sort of appearance that they are taking public funds. And so I think this should be up to the school whether or not they want to take the voucher program. And then again, like I said, this is something that is the laws are made out of Tallahassee. So again, as a school board member, none of us have the authority to change those rules. And so I think that's an important thing to note.
Great, thank you. Our next question comes from Tyler Payne. And we're going to start with Tom, Stephanie, and then Laura. Would you support expanding the fundamental program in elementary and middle schools? I attended Pasadena Elementary and Southside Middle. My classes were always very diverse, and I feel as though that has been very impactful on my adult life and appreciating diversity. So we'll start with you, Tom.
Yes, absolutely. I like the fundamental structure, and my oldest goddaughter, Quajay Scott, went to fundamental middle school and then went on to a medical magnet for high school. And I know it was tremendously impactful for her, and then for her learning, in particular with parent involvement. And so, there's a genuineness to fundamental that happens. and a connectivity between the school, the parent, the student, and the community. And yes, I would absolutely push for more fundamental education in our schools. And honestly, in some ways, the fundamental idea should be implemented in lots of ways countywide. Where that's possible. Currently, obviously, it's part of a choice program, and there seems to be more need for it than we currently offer. So yes, I would definitely agree with adding, at a minimum, fundamental programs within schools, so that you have fundamental cohorts of students or things like that, so that we can actually meet the needs of the community as it pertains to fundamental education.
Thank you.
So this is something that I've looked into extensively over the last couple of years. I have a lot of friends who children attend our fundamental schools, and a lot of friends who have struggled to get their children into the fundamental schools because of the model, the parent involvement, the accountability, and the connections between the parent and the teacher that are very much more prevalent in our fundamental schools. And so when you look at the last time period in January, this past January, when our parents were applying to these schools for the lottery, we had an overwhelming amount of families trying to get their children into these schools. And we have more elementary fundamentals than we do middle and high school. And so you really see this kind of gap between our children being able to get into the elementary schools and then, being able to continue on in a fundamental situation. And oftentimes what happens is then those students, the county then loses funding from those students because the parents cannot get their child into the school of their choice. And then the child opts for another option, which takes funding out of our Pinellas County schools. So this is a problem that we need to address, because the community is saying loud and clear that they want more choice options, right? And I think fundamentals is a great opportunity for that. So yes, I am 100% in favor of that. I like the fundamental school model. Again, I'm a huge, huge, huge advocate for parent involvement. And I think that really is the piece that works in our fundamental schools. Again, the accountability piece, the discipline accountability for students, and the engagement between parents and teachers. So I think all of those things are super important. And so I am in full, complete favor of expanding our fundamental schools where it makes sense. Now, the one thing we don't want to do is take over a neighborhood school and displace those students. So we have to do this strategically. We have to think this through, and we have to really make sure it works for the community before we do it. But yes, overall, I am in favor of expanding school choice in our district.
Super. Laura.
Hi, thanks. So I agree. I agree that my growing up and being bused for integration and going to integrated schools had a really important impact on me. And again, I believe that being in those environments matter, which is one of the things that the person who asked the question mentioned. I want to say, when it comes to the kind of school, the fundamental school, the magnet school, the charter school, all of the different schools, Article 9 of the Florida State Constitution has language such as education of children is a fundamental value of the state of Florida. It's a paramount duty of the state. Adequate provision shall be made for a high-quality system of public schools that allows students to obtain a high-quality education. Priority number one of mine is that the entire system of free public schools in Pinellas County enable students to obtain a high-quality education. Not some schools that have certain models, but all schools. So the fundamental model, yes, it's great. I've heard a lot of feedback. I've not personally been in it. I am in a traditional community school. Excuse me. What I would really love is to let the teachers and schools decide, and their parents and families. Priority number 2 of mine is unleashing our teachers, our schools, and our communities to create, innovate, elevate across the whole education experience. I think that while the number of restrictions and measurements that have come over the last 20 years were meant for improvement in outcomes, really this focus has come at the cost of the love of teaching, the love of learning, and the localized agility that's really required to meet and raise all students and families where they are. So I think that teacher and school trust, autonomy, reviews, respect, professional development, compensation, recruitment are all places that we could have great improvement. This priority for me is thriving teachers equal thriving classrooms. We have to do better by our teachers. And with specific regard to this question, what I would love is for our schools to be able to create their own programs. You should see the programs that Denver Public Schools offers. They have this innovation schools path where basically a school can apply. They have to submit, this is what our day will look like, this is what our curriculum will look like, this is the way we're going to do project-based learning or whatever their learning model is, and they can get that approved and then be cut free of some of these mandates. Do you know that Tallahassee actually mandates that you spend X number of minutes on X number of topic, and the teachers have to post in their classroom exactly what their schedule is, and if somebody walks in, they better be on that topic? Does that make sense to you? Does that sound like a love of learning and an environment where, I think a teacher should be able to spend the whole day on science if they feel like that's where their class is at. Yes, give them the standards, have accountability, absolutely. But we've got to cut free and allow for this love of learning, create curiosity, critical thinking skills. And I think a lot of this has to do with if you and your families and your school love the fundamental model, do it. Allow them to do it. We have lost too many teachers. We have amazing teachers. We have lost too many who've gone and started their own schools because they felt like their hands were tied because they couldn't initiate their own model. Let us please allow our schools, our principals, our families, our communities to develop the kinds of schools that they believe will help their students and families thrive, to include this model and others.
Thanks very much, Laura. We're going to do one last question that'll be a unique one, and I'm going to channel my inner Adam Smith, Tiger Bay board member, and offer to all of you to become moderator for a minute and allow each of you to ask one question, and you can choose to which of your opponents you would ask that question. And it could be a softball, or it might be something that might differentiate yourself with these other candidates that you might then use your final minute wrap up to address. So, Stephanie, you're up to choose a candidate who you'd like to ask a question to.
Okay, so I think one of the things that I have been asked quite often about is this idea of extending the school day. So, Laura, if you could explain to me and everyone else what that looks like to you, because I think there's a lot of questions about that, and a lot of families have reached out to me asking me if that's something I support. And so I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that and why you would support that.
Good. Thank you. I'm really happy about that question. So when I say extending the school day, I mean extending the school day with enrichments, with the kinds of things that lots of families drive their kids around after school because they know that it helps with their brains and their hearts and their minds and moving through life. This model comes from Academy Prep, which a lot of people might know. It's a private school in South St. Pete that focuses wholly on the lower income population, and they have great success in actually impacting the cycle of poverty. They are a middle school with 100% high school graduation rate. It's amazing. So I have spent time there, and I said, what is it that you do that makes them the most impact? And they said it was two things. One is their ratio of school counselors to students. They have one school counselor per 100 students. Those counselors know their kids, know their families, and can respond and react. Second is this extended day. So they're actually there for several hours longer. They have, music, acting, dance, sports, art, everything. Again, all the things that lots of parents and people drive their kids around to. And so at our school, I thought, how could we do this? And so the school day is only 6 hours. What if it were 7 hours? What are the kinds of things that we would like our kids to be able to have in the school day? And it is amazing. In 3 years, so we actually call it the 7th hour program. In 3 years, we now have 16 unique after-school programs. Science, Lego Club, Makerspace, robotics, garden club, a whole range of them. And I'm sorry, everyone who's listening, who I'm not mentioning yours, soccer, yoga, dance, all of them. It's amazing. Drama club. And they are available to all students. We figured out how to fundraise and get scholarships. We figured out how to include our teachers in this model. We said, what is it that you love to do and that you would love to share with your students? And so now our teachers are staying after school longer. They're being compensated for it and doing what they love with a group of kids in the school who have raised their hand. So we figured out how to get them going, get it scholarship, and provide transportation home. The most important thing we can do when we're coming up with these new programs and ideas is identify the barriers to access. And so we identified the barriers to access being financial and transportation, and systematically looked at how we could do that. So when it comes to the extended school day, it certainly wouldn't apply to everybody.
Sorry. That's all right. It's great, the passion, and I think that's. And I want to give you the opportunity to ask a question to one of your two opponents now as well.
Okay. I don't think I have one really. I'm grateful for this opportunity to be in the public sphere, and I really value everyone who puts their hat in the ring. As a veteran, the first article.
I'm gonna cut you off there, because if you don't have one in respect of time, since we're running short,
okay.
Tom, do you have a question for one of the other candidates?
I do, yes. I'd like to ask Stephanie how she would bring environmental issues into the school, like sustainability, energy conservation, climate change science, and all of that.
Okay, so this is something that I teach, in fact. I was teaching, last year I taught 7th grade world geography, and part of our curriculum was to talk about the environment in the world today. And so I think we need to be responsible stewards of our environment, of this world. And so bringing that to the board, I think, is obviously very important. Like I said, I've had the experience to teach some of those things to my own students about the value of taking care of this world that we have, about the value of the resources, the natural resources that we have, and being responsible with that. So, all of those things are super important to me. And like I said, I've had the chance to teach them. And so, great question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And thank you for all of those thoughtful and insightful questions and informative answers. A very special thank you to the candidates for joining us today, and to everyone who has participated in the Suncoast Tiger Bay virtual event. We hope you will join us July 22nd at noon for our next virtual event, which is the State Representative District 70 Candidate Forum. Thank you so much and have a great day.